Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hook Turn podcast, your favorite car podcast, with my very good friend Sanviv. How are you tonight, Sanviv?
I'm quite good. I'm looking forward to today's topics. We actually I remember very early on. I think we talked about VFAX in one of our earliest episodes, and they never got back to it again. But now that over half the year has finished, and this year especially has been really interesting in terms of car sales, especially in light of the war in Iran and how that's influenced petrol prices and therefore purchasing decisions for cars. There's actually quite a lot to talk about.
Mm.
Also, we're going to talk about two new-ish models from BYD, plus another surprise car from a brand that almost no one has heard of, I have to imagine.
Definitely, yeah. I think the last topic, yeah, I don't think many, if any, of our listeners have heard of this brand, so stay tuned for that one. But let's talk about VFAX, and new car sales in July. So, in June, it was actually a bit of a shock. I mean, I guess it wasn't entirely sort of unexpected, but it was still a shock because BYD came, within essentially 200 sales of Toyota, which was, wow, like that was incredible because for context, Toyota has essentially been dominating new car sales, like with 20% market share on a month-to-month basis, and for the last, well, since since at least the last 2 3 years, and probably longer, like since for a long period of time. So BYD came very, very close to upsetting Toyota in June 2026. But I think, Sanbib, would it be fair to say we're back to the usual running order in July?
Well, not well. Usual is a strong word because yes, Toyota's still on top, but the idea of BYD being in second place, even I would say
Yeah.
pre-Iran war a few months ago would have been like they were like seventh, eighth. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe sixth was feasible. Now second consistently, this is
Mm.
absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Definitely. And just to provide our listeners with an overview with the top 10 car brands, so I'll just quickly rattle them off. So you had Toyota with 20,409 sales. So that's more. And then BYD came in second place with about 7,800. Then you had Kia, Mazda, Ford, Hyundai, Tesla, Chery, GWM, and MG. So, I mean, I think the real story here is not with Toyota coming, back to being number one, but yes, and to your point, BYD overtaking Kia, Mazda, Ford, and Hyundai, all of which are, spots 3 to 6 are all very established brands, all of which, have been doing relatively well over the last sort of like 18 to 24 months, but BYD has sort of this year like really leapfrogged them. So
Yeah.
that's an insane story. And just to look at more the sort of the year on year change. So you have BYD up 70%. So that's, I mean, compared to this time last year. So that's, I mean, that's a huge figure. And that's out of the top 10 brands. So only Tesla, which is up 421%. And I think that's because of the Tesla Model Y suddenly doing very well as well, because of what's happening in the Middle East. Cherry up 46.6% and MG up 42.4%. So basically a lot of the Chinese brands and Tesla are up quite a bit, but every other sort of quote unquote legacy brand is down significantly. Like, everything from 11% for Kia, Mazda down 13.3%. Even GWM is down 4.3%. But yeah, so yeah, same with BYD sort of leapfrogging. And I think what is it? The car that you have, the C Line 7, is one of the key drivers of that.
That's correct. And I'm looking at the year to date, 2026.
Yeah.
Toyota's first, BYD second, Ford is third. It's quite amazing that last year BYD sold 28,000 cars for the
Mm,
whole of 2025, and now they're already over 60,000, and we still have
yeah.
so many months of the year left. So
Same.
it's
Yeah.
quite like absolutely
More
incredible.
incredible.
how quickly they've grown. The other thing I'm actually more interested in, rather than the brands overall, I'm also interested in the specific models because I
Yeah.
actually think in some ways they tell a bigger story. Now, okay, year to date, Ford Ranger, Toyota Hilux, top two, okay. They're always going to be top two in a market like Australia. But the reality is that if you look at their sales, a lot of, especially for the Hilux, a lot of it is driven by fleet sales, which
Mm.
are, of course, real sales, but not necessarily the sort of sales that we're always going to be interested in. Then the third, which is, of course, one of the biggest winners of this war, the Tesla Model Y already sold 25,000 year to date so
Mm.
far in 2026. Last year, they sold 10,986 overall. So, like, the Tesla Model
More
Y
than
has been
twice.
doing
Yeah.
unbelievably well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable well. And then the Toyota RAV4, I suspect while it's 7,000 still below what they did last year, I suspect as the new model comes online and delivery starts getting pushed out, it will probably beat last year's record.
Yeah.
Then we start getting to the more interesting cars. The next best-selling car is the Cherry Tiggo 4 Pro. Now, the Cherry Tiggo 4 Pro is interesting simply because of the fact it's probably obviously one of Australia's cheapest cars, certainly one of Australia's cheapest SUVs, but also goes to show that for a lot of people looking at cars, they're not like for people like me and you,
Mm.
it would be like, a terrible car, right? Pretty
Yeah.
awful. But for most people who are looking for a car that goes A to B for 24 grand, I've started in a Cherry to go for a Pro only very recently. For 24 grand, even I'll admit that you're getting a lot of car for 24 grand.
Mm.
Like you're getting a nice screen, you're getting pretty modern safety features, you're getting pretty nice tech. Yes, it's probably extremely unrefined to drive and
Mm.
things like that. But for people just going A to B, 24 grand for a car with that many features, it really goes to show that's the kind of like that's extremely basically appealing for people in that price bracket. Hyundai Kona, actually the next highest, very surprisingly, one of those cars that you don't think about too much, but it, it's pretty much a really like it's in a way a really good car simply because they've got a lot of variants. You can get in the base one for 30, mid 30s, and then all the way to a top spec one for 50 grand. They've got the EVs, they've got hybrids, and they've got regular petrol,
Mm.
reasonably contemporary design, pretty contemporary interior. So not a particularly exciting car, but for a lot of people, obviously exactly the way to
It's still
go.
fairly new as well, right? Like when did
Yeah.
the Kona was the new generation kind of came out? What like was it last year or the year before?
I
Maybe.
think a bit for 2023, 2024, yeah,
Oh
something
yeah, so
along
it's still
that. Yeah.
fairly yeah.
And then, yeah, and then BYD Line 70, just tiny, couple of units behind the Kona, will almost certainly overtake the Kona over the next couple of months. Again, as you pointed out, one of the biggest drivers for BYD, obviously contributing significantly to the success. But as we're going to talk about with BYD in a second, what the main advantage is that they're not so reliant on just one model. So while the C Line 7 is driving a lot of their sales, it's
Mm.
15,000 of their total 60,000 sales. So it's not even close to half of their sales. So unlike with Tesla, where they're so dependent on the Model Y, even BYD's best-selling car is not even, it's like a third, not
Yeah.
even a third almost of
Yeah.
all of their sales. So it's quite impressive in that sense.
And I think this is you speak of Tesla being reliant on one model. I think Ford is even more reliant on one model. Like look at the Ford Ranger. Like yes, year to date it's done 30,356. But what else? That's I mean that's they're essentially just dependent on that. The Everest is up like I mean it's doing okay 12,830 that's too but that's far short of the Ranger and I think this is we talk about BYD like BYD have the Shark 6 I think which Sandra you'll touch on in just a moment like I would if I was at Ford I would be very very worried that my sales are really just dependent on the Ranger if the Ranger dies which is very possible because the youth segment now, there's so many more Chinese youths coming online. You have the Shark 6, which is doing like it's actually, is it on the list? Yeah, it is on the list. It's doing it 10,709. So it's not doing like I mean it's for a
And in private sales, it's actually the best-selling private
yeah,
seller
there you go.
unit.
So it shows how reliant the Ranger is on these fleet sales. So, if some of these fleet managers start swapping to Chinese utes and then the Ford Ranger is really, really going to be in trouble. And unlike Toyota and, BYD for that matter, Ford does not really have a backup model. The Ranger really is like they've put all of their eggs in that Ranger
And
basket.
the Everest, I think, slightly.
Yeah, I mean the Everest is it's okay, it's doing okay, like 12,830, which is, I mean, it is a popular model, but they're essentially relying on those two models. They have what else? Actually, what else do they even have in their lineup? They have the Mark E and they have the Mustang. I think is that the only other two cars they have because they've got
Basically, yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
those two models are nothing. So if the Ranger dies, and there's the Cherry Ute, there's the Cherry Stockman coming, there's the BYD will start increasing its sales as well. There's a lot more Chinese Utes coming on market. Yeah, I would be pretty worried if I was Ford. Um,
Yeah. And the other thing to note is how far, as you alluded to earlier, some of the traditional brands have fallen. Like
mm,
Nissan is definitely struggling. Volkswagen, another brand, significantly struggling.
yeah,
A lot of these brands basically are finding that they don't have the brand recognition or the brand loyalty that a brand like Toyota has, and they obviously can't compete with the Chinese. So
mm,
they're kind of stuck in this middle ground where they used to occupy a segment where, people would buy Volkswagen, they wanted something slightly nicer than a Toyota. But now you can get something nicer than a Toyota in many Chinese brands, let's face it.
mm,
The reality is that the kind of interiors that Volkswagen offers now don't feel that much more special than one you can get in a BYD or a
mm,
Cherry or an MG. Not like, yes, it to someone who knows cars, it might be a bit better, but for the average consumer, they have massive screens. What else could you really want?
yeah,
So, it's going to be very interesting to see how these brands compete in the future, especially as the Chinese get more and more like their product line and diversifies. Because one other thing that BYD has, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the BYD's new cars, is that they've got almost a car in every segment
yeah,
now. Like they've almost, apart from a minivan, which they've effectively got coming in their Denza,
mm,
they have, and if I'm correct, the rumors are that BYD will have their own BYD branded minivan as well sometime later this year or next year. But
mm,
other than that, they've got nearly every market segment covered, to hatchbacks in the Atto 1 and the Dolphin, to small SUVs in the Atto 2, to mid-size, slightly cheaper SUVs in the Atto 3, to mid-size premium SUVs in the C-Line 7, to premium 7-seat SUVs in the C-Line 8. Like they've got so, and then if you want a sedan, you've got the Seal. If you want a wagon, now you've got the Seal Touring. Like there's almost no, like, they're not as ubiquitous as Toyota is. And if you had a
mm,
Denza, by the way, then you've got a Prado competitor in the Denza B5 as well. So
mm,
they've got like so many markets.
yeah. Do you think like because I look at BYD have like very rapidly rolled out as you've said, Sam, we have a very extensive product range. Do you think there's a risk that they're expanding too much too quickly, like with maybe MG? Because you had MG also have like a relative. I think probably MG has and BYD and maybe Cherry is up there as well with the broadest sort of range of models. But like I think MG has a sort of models in most segments as well. But they aren't doing that well. I think they're given the amount of models that they have, they're not doing, I guess, as well as you would think because they had what was it 2023 or 2024 when they had like 50,000 sales or 60,000 sales a year. Like they did well for like maybe 1 or 2 years, and now they've sort of fallen back to earth. Do you think BYD runs that same risk as well?
I think BYD has a few more advantages over MG. First, the cars are better. That is more or less a fact.
Mm,
BYD cars are better than MG cars. And their design is better, interior is better, technology is better. The
mm,
other thing is that their EVs are proper. They don't effectively offer any hybrids. They're either PHEVs or electric cars. So every single car that they have, you can drive solely on pure electric.
mm,
So I think that, and as I said, had the Iran war not happened, I reckon you would have seen BYD still stuck in that 6, 7 place. To be fair, Tesla also would have been the same. Tesla would not experience the kind of demand that it does now,
mm,
but you would have seen BYD and Tesla stuck in that place. So yes, BYD had just been this unbelievably privileged position that
Mm.
just as demand for EVs have hit, they've
Yeah.
managed to be like, okay, what EV do you want? Do you want a tiny 24 grand EV that will just get you here to here?
Mm.
As we'll talk about the Atto 2, which has been doing really well for
Yeah.
BYD, even though it's very new, after the Sea Line 7 and Shark 6 is their third best-selling car.
Mm.
Small SUV under 35 grand. You've got that. The Atto 3, even then that's selling, even like it's old now, but even that's selling okay, if I'm correct. It's still selling reasonably well this year. So, and then as I mentioned, you want a sedan, you've got the Seal, you want a Seal 6 Touring if you want to like they've
Yeah.
got nearly every segment covered. So you're yeah, I think that the product planners at BYD are being being relatively clever. Even the two cars we'll talk about from BYD are
Mm.
evolutions of existing cars more so than
Mm.
full-on replacements or evolutions or variants of existing cars rather than full-on replacements.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, no, and I do think that, BYD is more sort of EV focused than MG is. So they do have like I do agree that they have better sort of technology. They're more vertically integrated, and so on and so forth. Just on, I know we touched on, brands that are sort of very reliant on one or two models. So we touched on Tesla, we touched on Ford as well. Another brand just that I think was doing really well and is still doing, I think, okay, but I feel is at a real risk of being very overtaken very quickly because I just don't think they have the sort of engineering depth or expertise. Is probably Isuzu. So Isuzu has two models. They have the D-Max and then they have the MUX, which is essentially like the Ford Everest competitor, like a four-wheel drive based on the D-Max. They are just, I think that what are they? Just outside year to date, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They're coming 12th, so they're just behind. They're sort of sandwiched between MG and Subaru, but I reckon, like, with what's happening with the Iran war, there's more stringent emissions regulations now with the vehicle efficiency standards and NVES. Um, yes, I think they've revealed an electric D-Max, but it's nothing near like in terms of capability or range to even like the electric Hilux, let alone the Shark PHEV. And they don't have any other models. Their main powertrains, they're still very reliant on that sort of diesel powertrain. I think they are at a real risk of being overtaken by some of these up and coming Chinese brands as well. Sambit, what are your thoughts on Isuzu?
I mean, they basically, as you said, like I have to imagine that I'm not obviously that familiar with the youth segment. I have to imagine there's a reason why Isuzu still, the D-Max is still as popular as it is. Maybe they've got also just
They've
a
got,
small but very loyal customer base.
yeah,
But
brand, I
yes,
think brand equity.
yeah, yeah. But it will be interesting to see how these small brands go about in the future, whether the people running these brands are worried about the threat of the Chinese cars and how they're going to compete with them in the future. As we've spoken about, unlike Europe, where while they sell Chinese cars, they're simply not as price competitive as they are in Australia. In that sense, we are so fortunate.
Mm,
Not that Chinese cars themselves exist, but they force every single other company to be much more competitive in our
yeah,
market.
yeah. They force more of a race to the bottom, which is not necessarily good for the manufacturers, but very good for us as consumers. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think, yeah, Isuzu, just for context, they are, I mean, year to date, they are doing better than Subaru, Nissan, which have, much more expansive lineups. So, I mean, given they have two models, they've been doing well. And I'm just having a look, like even year to date, you look at like Geely has done, I would say, has done amazingly well. Like, yes, in absolute terms, they've sold 14,000 models, but last year they only sold 2,000 cars, and they're even ahead of BMW, they're ahead of Volkswagen, and actually BMW is ahead of Volkswagen. And I think that says a lot about how badly Volkswagen is doing. That's actually very shocking for, BMW to be overtaking Volkswagen, which is much more premium lineup, and so on. Um, Then you have, even like just for context, like Omoda JQ, which I believe is now separated, reported separately from Cherry, that's doing better than Honda. So, and that's coming again. You look at the year-to-date figures. Omoda JQ last year sold 1124, and now it's selling, it's almost done 11,000 models. So I think part of that is because they've sort of separated that into a different brand. But um, like if you add the Omoda JQ figures to Cherry, so that's 11,000 plus, you know, 29,000. So that's almost like what, 41,000. There would be, I think they'd be what, they would be above GWM and they'd be just below Hyundai. So Cherry and Omoda, they're essentially coming what, one, two, three, four, five, six. They're coming seventh in the market. So that's, I think that's a solid result for Cherry as well. So, Cherry, GWM, you can swap those places around. And then even if you look at Geely, I think if you add sort of Zeekr to Geely and then you add Volvo, so that's 4 grand with Volvo, then 8 grand with Zeekr, so that's 12 grand, and then you do Geely another what's Geely 14 grand, so that's what 26 grand. So they're above, they're even Geely is sort of above Isuzu as a brand, if you include all of their sub brands. So that's, MG and then Geely, the Geely, Volvo, Zeekr coming just below MG. So I think you can see overall that these Chinese brands are sort of rapidly becoming dominant in the Australian market. You have to admit that. So yeah. Okay, Sandeep, did you have any other comments with VFAX, or should we move on to our next topic?
I'll just be curious to see whether these like how it shakes up over the rest of the year. It seems like the war is not going to be stopping anytime soon. Petrol
Mm,
prices are now going to go up now that the fuel excise has come back in. So yeah, I'll
mm.
be curious to see if people still are going to transition to EVs, plug-in hybrids, and general hybrids over the next few months. This is a permanent change to Australia's car market, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be very curious to see what happens. I think one question that I'm really interested is, how sustainable are some of these brands going to be? Like, especially you look at brands, and maybe at the end of this year, Samba, we do a bit of like a death watch for what brands we think are going to exit the market. Because I'm looking at especially at brands like, like Peugeot. 475, even like Jeep 357. Fiat, I think, is essentially what, almost a zombie now because they've stopped selling the new Fiat 500 electric. And what else do they have? I think Fiat just have what, they still have I don't even know if they're still selling the old Fiat 500. So I think they have a couple of vans and that's it. Alfa Romeo, again, not doing very well. Um, so you look at some of these, brands, and I don't think they're really sustainable for much longer. So let's see what happens. Okay, look, let's move on to our next topic, which is the BYD Atto 3 Evo and the BYD Atto 2 plug-in hybrid. So I think Sam have touched on this. The Atto 3 was that the first BYD model, or was it the Dolphin that came out first in Australia?
The Addo 3 was the first one. The
Oh,
Dolphin came out
okay.
like 6 months later, six,
Okay,
7 months.
okay.
Yeah.
So we have now coming soon a facelifted essentially model of BYD's original car in Australia, the Atto 3. So and I think it would be a bit of an honestly, a bit of an understatement to call it a facelift. Especially in the top spec model, there's quite a few changes that they've made, and we have some news with the Atto 2, potentially a plug-in hybrid model. So, Sandeep, as the resident BYD expert out of the two of us, do you want to go into a little bit more uh, detail about these two models?
I think the entry level Addo 3 Evo Dynamic, that will actually be I think BYD is only because that's effectively almost the same as the
Yeah.
current gen model, just with the exterior change and
And
the
the
some of the interior upgrades.
battery is a bit different as well,
The
right?
battery is slightly bigger,
Yeah.
and it goes by slightly longer, but fundamentally a lot of it's the same. As
Mm,
in, like I said, you get the exterior that's different and you get the interior that's slightly different, but
mm,
really the main changes come with the premium one. The most interesting thing is that it comes with the 800 volt electrical system, which, if I'm correct, will be BYD's first one sold in Australia with the
mm,
800 volt electrical capacity, because even the C Line 7 tops out at 400, and certainly the ones below it, obviously, also about 400. So
mm,
even though the Atto 3 Evo will still premium would still most likely be priced lower than the C Line 7 premium, simply because it's a smaller car
mm.
and a bit less luxurious, I guess you could say. It will actually have more future-proof electric tech than even the C Line 7, given that it's got an 800 volt architecture, which should mean that it has significantly higher charging speeds.
Mm.
So we'll
I,
also have a lot more range,
yeah,
510 kilometers
I,
on the
I
premium
would
one.
I would wager that the Atto 3 Evo Premium is probably I think it's what the cheapest is the cheapest EV with an 800 volt architecture. Like, I mean, we don't know the pricing yet, so
Yeah, I think right now the Xpeng G6 has that at 52 grand.
okay,
This
let's see. Yeah.
this will be not 50, it'll be cheaper than 52 grand, yes, but I still feel like it'll be close to 50 grand for the premium.
Mm.
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised. I think the entry level will be like low 40s,
Okay.
dynamic, and I wouldn't be surprised if the premium's like 46, 47,
Yeah.
and then after on-roads will be 50 or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
it won't be too different from the Sea Lion 7, but as I said, if you're actually looking for the better tech, I would actually suggest that the Atto 3 Evo Premium would be better electrical uh, architecture technology is more advanced than even the Sea Lion 7, and it's a lot more future-proofed.
yeah.
Um, Otherwise, it's gotten very much more improved reviews from the British reviewers.
Mm.
Supposedly, the premium, the rear-wheel drive model drives significantly better than the current gen Atto 3, I guess. And so it will be one of those buys where people who know and will be like, this is actually quite a good car for the money.
Mm.
Um, it will also, like the C Line 8, come with Android, not automotive. It's like Google built in. So basically, the C Line 7 doesn't come with it, comes with BYD's own thing, but C Line 8 already comes with it. And both the Atto 3 Evo and the Atto 2 plug-in hybrid, I believe, should come with Google built in. So like the
Oh.
maps and stuff are native Google Maps rather than the C Line 8 again already has this native Google Maps and stuff compared to the BYD sort of mapping solution and a few more Android specific tweaks.
Mm. Okay. And I think the other thing just point out is, and this is sort of similar to what happened with the Polestar 2, but the entry level out of three, whatever it's called, what is it called again? The premium? Oh, no, 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 sorry,
The dynamic.
the dynamic. That will be front wheel drive, and the premium is going to be rear wheel drive, and that comes with that 800 volt architecture. And I believe the other benefit is that the premium will have a frunk, and I don't think the entry level one will, because that's still front wheel drive and still sort of based on the old electric architecture. So that's another thing to note. But yeah, what do you think about this? Do you think it's a little bit, they're being a tad deceptive that they're accepting pre-orders without actually revealing what the pricing and features are going to be? Like they've hinted at a few things, but they haven't like released the full specifications or the full pricing sandwich.
I mean, like they're not forcing anyone to pay, so I
Yeah.
guess you can still wait. Like if someone is that enthusiastic, they're going to put $1,000 deposit on a car that it hasn't even got final pricing, then good. Like I don't know, like they're very confident in their purchase clearly. But um, as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the dynamic starts at the low 40s and the premium starts at the high 40s, closer to
Yeah.
50. I think that's broadly speaking where they should land.
Yeah. I
They
mean,
can't go above the Sea Line 7 because it isn't as premium a car as the Sea Line
yeah.
7.
Yeah.
And if the Sea Line 7's 55, then yeah,
Yeah.
that's reasonable. It'll be 48, 49 for the premium.
Yeah.
And they have to still keep the Atto 3, in fact, I suspect that's why they haven't, like, for the entry level one, I suspect that's why they've even kept the 400 volts in front wheel drive to keep the price low. So that should be around low 40s, I reckon.
Yeah, so just for context for our listeners, with the current, so the outgoing Arrow 3, the pricing
So
is,
if I thought they're going to still sell the current Atto 3 alongside the Evo for a
oh,
while at least.
I didn't, okay, I'm not sure. Let's see. I guess we'll find out very soon, but in terms of, I mean, in terms of the pricing for the outgoing model, just for context, you have the Arrow 3 Essential at 39,990, and then you have the premium at 44,990. So I would suspect, and I think similar to what you've said, Sanbib, I would expect for the Evo, the entry level model will probably be at the 44,990 mark, because that's sort of taking the dynamic in the updated range will sort of have the same price as the outgoing premium, because it has a similar battery, etc., etc., and they've dropped the smaller battery in the essential, so they'll keep the pricing there. And then maybe the new premium, with so the BYD Atto 3 Evo premium, that will, maybe if they can do it for 49,990 or 59,990, I think that would be very fairly attractive pricing. But yeah, I don't know. Has there been some confirmation that they'll keep the old model? Like, I didn't realize that they were going
I
to do.
read somewhere a while ago, but I guess we'll have to wait till the final
Yeah,
details are revealed.
yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess I don't know. It'll be pretty. I guess we've sort of seen it with MG, but then I mean, they have the old. I mean, they don't really have the old MG, but they've kept the MG4 branding and changed it to MG4 Urban, and but that is a different car. I mean, I think it would be pretty confusing if they still kept the Arrow 3 and then they had the Arrow 3 Evo. Like, wouldn't it be a bit too congested? Because I mean, how much is the Dolphin and the Arrow 2? Like, the Arrow 2, yes, is what, low 30s, but then isn't the Dolphin like already high 30s, Sandvip, for the
Yes, I believe so. It's already starts at mid 30s or high 30s, yes.
yeah,
But the
so
Dolphin is secretly the top spec one has a very quite good range for a small hatchback.
yeah, but I don't know. I feel like, I mean, BYD can do what they want, obviously, but yeah, from a product planning perspective, maybe it's a little bit confusing if you have, you already have the Dolphin, you have then you keep the old Addo 3, and then not to mention in that 30 to $40,000 bracket, you also have what is it, the Sea Lion 6? That's the plug-in hybrid model, is it?
That's cool. But even from other brands, the Geely EX5, the Leap Motor C10, you've got some other options in that price bracket. So they have
Yeah.
to be careful. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, even if you look at the BYD sort of its already line up, it's getting a bit cluttered um if they kept their existing old BYD. So um let's see. If they kept their old BYD out of three. But let's see. I'm curious to see what happens. So yeah. Okay. Look, do we, I don't know if we touched on what the actual offer is. Did we touch on that? So you pay $1,100 to pre-order. I think that's what the,
That's correct. Yeah. You'll be one of the first in line.
yeah, okay. Okay, I mean, yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of BYD super fans. Maybe you're one of them, Sanbib, who are interested in this uh BYD Atto 3 Evo if you hadn't bought your C Line 7.
Now, I'd still get a Sea Line 7 over it, but yes, it is interesting. Yes, I would no doubt.
Yeah. Okay. Look, should we move on to our final topic, which is the what is it? How do you pronounce it, Sanviv? Is it Donkavort?
The Goncourt, yeah, I will just butcher the pronunciation and just hope that the Dutch people that listen to our podcast are okay with it.
Yeah, so it's Donkavort or Dunkavort. I'm gonna put on a very pseudo Dutch accent, but I think I mean, we'll talk about the styling in a bit, but I mean, I think the biggest news with this car is the fact that it's actually available to order for Australians and the fact that it's being made in right-hand drive. Like, I think that in and of itself is a huge deal. So, just for our listeners' context, Donkervoort is a very niche Dutch sports car brand, niche to the point where, they produce maybe like in the hundreds, if that, per year. So like when by hundreds, like low hundreds, like maybe they'll make like 100 cars, 200 cars max. Every year they're only really producing one model at a time. Essentially what their key message is, maximum, they're going really hard on like that analog experience. So maximum power for minimum weight. And I think maybe the closest sort of comparable, sorry, not closest sort of competition and comparative analogs are probably like Ariel. So some of our listeners may have heard of Ariel, which is like a British brand that is very sort of track focused, uses Honda sort of Civic Type R engines in a very sort of open chassis, doesn't have any doors or anything. Aerial cars, some of them are road legal, some of them aren't. I think Donkervoort, this model, their cars are road legal, and this model is road legal, has conventional doors, but is very, very stripped back. And what's the key selling point? I think it's 400 and you're getting 450 kilowatts of power through the rear wheels in a car that weighs 780 kilograms. So that's that is insanely light. Like you think the Mazda MX-5 is light. This is that the Mazda MX-5 for context weighs over 1,000 kilograms, even in its lightest format. Like if you bought the European version with a 1.5 liter engine, manual, you're still above 1,000 kilograms. So this is more than 200 kilos lighter but has a 450 kilowatt engine, which is, that is an absolutely insane, like just, I mean, mind-blowing power to weight ratio. And driving the rear wheels as well. So that's, you have to be very brave to drive this car. I think it's, what is it, a manual transmission, I think. So it's just, absolutely sort of d- basically insane power to weight ratios. And look, they've stripped that weight back. They don't have any sort of, like technology, like advanced technology, or I'm not even sure if they have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. Forget about having, autonomous emergency braking, any of those advanced safety systems. It's basically four wheels in a closed body, a massive engine, driving the rear wheels, and some insane styling. I think, would that be fair to say, Sandvip?
Yeah, I think that this car obviously will appeal to extremely specific people. After on roads, you'll probably in Europe it goes for about $500,000. In Australia, it'd probably go for closer to $700,000 after on roads and all the other costs. At $700,000, if you're buying this car, I don't think anyone's actually going to drive it. Like anyone who's buying it has seven hundred
It would be
thousand
a
dollars.
shame if they don't drive it, but
Yeah, but yes, anyone who's spending $700,000, or they'll drive it on the track because,
yeah.
yeah. But it is interesting this whole power to choose, changing how much power there is at the touch
That's
of a
right.
button. It's quite impressive. As you said, the weight is absolutely incredible. It's funny how fast it is as well, as you said, like 0 to 200 in 7.4 seconds. That is absolutely unreal.
Yeah.
Um, as far as Apple Car, I can't see a
Yeah.
infotainment cluster. The only screen seems to be
A-
the
And
instrument
I'm
gauge.
on their website and they don't make any mention, which is entirely fair enough. Yeah.
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 The other reason why you'd buy it is because of how rare it is. Like, as you said, they're going to only make 160 of these apparently, or 150 of these worldwide.
Mm.
So we're talking people like, yeah, it's a very rare car. It's going to be very rare. And as I said, I don't know who's in the market for these. I'm sure there is obviously someone, but it almost looks like a big go-kart.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%. And you just look at some of the styling from the rear, like it has these like It's like it's almost like a car out of like, Mario Kart or something. Like, yeah, like the rare like the wheels are like the front wheels are sort of like almost semi-enclosed. Like it vaguely reminds me of like a Caterham. It's like you have these like open wheels, and the rear is like you have these massively flared like rare fenders and rare wheel arches. Like it's almost like protruding. The front of the car is a lot narrower than the rear of the car. It's almost like an arrow. Like if you're looking at this from the top, the rear is much wider than the front of the car, and it just looks absolutely insane. Like I'm surprised they were able to make this road legal, to be honest. Like you won't mistake it for anything else on the road, that's for sure. It comes with a targa top as well, so that's pretty cool. You have weather protection, but if you want a convertible driving experience, you can have that. Yeah, yeah, absolutely crazy. Yes, and sorry, Sam, if I think I interrupted you. Were you saying something else?
No, I was just saying that it's an interesting car in terms of, yes, like we have small manufacturers in like that exists. Obviously, it's much more difficult nowadays, given how difficult it is to produce a car, even with major backing companies like Lucid and stuff.
Mm.
Not like sometimes struggling, and then we've got those brands like Fisker and VinFast. I mean, they were targeting a different sort of customer base, but yeah,
Mm.
Hennessy though similar idea-ish, but they obviously are a bit more American style supercar,
Yeah,
just all about horsepower more so than
yeah, top
uh,
speed and stuff.
top
Yeah,
speed and stuff. But yes, as I said, it's nice to see that these small, unique brands are still producing these sorts of cars, even as like cars are getting more and more technologically advanced, more
yeah,
heavier, obviously more screen dependent. It's good to see that cars like this are still
yeah.
trying to keep it almost analog.
Yeah, and I think I mean, I'm very happy that this car exists just for the fact that I'm happy that there's a customer base for it. Like, to your point, there's so many, every day we see, bigger screen size, all of this fancy technology, wham bam stuff. And it's good to just have this manufacturer, which is being a bit of a rebel, just focusing on outrageous power, just keep it to the absolute stripped back basics, and charge an insane money for it, and surprisingly have insane, have a good customer base. And just for context, I'm just looking at the Donkavort website and the specifications. The acceleration figures, so they have 0 to 200 kilometers an hour. Sam, we've touched on this, 7.4 seconds. Guess what they say for 0 to 100 kilometers an hour?
I'm not sure. Maybe 3 seconds.
They don't even give a figure. They just say appropriate.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would say about 3 seconds. Yes.
Yeah, they just say appropriate. It's appropriately fast enough. So I think that says pretty much all you need to know about Donkavort. So good on them. I'm very 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 happy that they're around. I would be very lucky to see maybe the one right-hand drive Australian delivered example that comes here, because I think they're going to make 30 right-hand, was it 30 or 35 right-hand drive cars, and that's across the UK, Australia, I think New Zealand, and sorry, yeah, Australia joins New Zealand, the UK, Japan, Singapore, and Hong Kong as right-hand drive markets, and there are going to be fewer than 30 examples. So I would suspect that the UK, Japan, and Hong Kong will probably have, I think the UK and Japan will have the lion's share. Then you'll have maybe if one or two in Australia, and then maybe one in Hong Kong. And if New Zealand has one, I'll be incredibly amazed. Like that'll be amazing.
If New Zealand gets one, surely we get three. Just
Yeah,
that ratio.
I wonder if New Zealand will, who knows? I mean, if New Zealand, I don't know. I mean, maybe you want to drive around the South Island with this car or something, but surely New Zealand, yeah, it's possible, but surely New Zealand won't get like, I can't imagine anyone in New Zealand being interested in this car. I mean, come on. Anyway, maybe I'm just being a bit too stereotypical about New Zealanders, but oh well. All right. Look, I think we might end our episode here, but Thank you very much again for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.